Formannen.
Good to see you. Good morning, colleagues. Please take your seats. And the sitting is open. So, I think we are ready now. The first item on the agenda is the joint debate on Ukraine. And we begin with a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. And the topic is EU actions to ensure security guarantees and just peace for Ukraine. And after that, we take the report by Mr. Galla, 2023 and 2024 reports on Ukraine. So with that, I would like to invite the High Representative to the rostrum. Good morning, and please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, dear President, dear members of the European Parliament. International efforts to end Russia's war have stepped up in the last few months, but Russia's response is more aggression. Over the weekend, Russia launched the largest aerial assault of this war so far. Putin has zero interest in peace, and he will not stop the war until he's forced to. And this is why the European Union and our member states have provided almost €169 billion of financial support since the full-scale war started in 2022. This includes over €63 billion in military support for Ukraine. And this year alone, member states will provide more than ever before, €25 billion to date. They have now also provided 80% of our 2 million rounds ammunition target. We aim 100% by October. And this is all so that Ukraine can defend itself, defend its civilians and push back the aggression. Europe is also the largest backer of Ukraine's own defense industry through windfall profits from the Russian frozen assets. And Europeans have stuck together through 18 rounds of sanctions against Russia and those who enable Russia's war, 4 in the last 9 months alone. International sanctions have already deprived Russia of at least $450 billion in war funds, including $154 billion in revenues from oil. Europe was one of the largest markets of Russian energy, but not anymore. By 2027, hopefully, we won't be importing any Russian gas and oil at all. The European Union has also sanctioned 444 shadow fleet ships that circumvent our sanctions and bring Russia illegal oil revenues. Ukraine's bravery, backed up by international support, has already prevented Russia from achieving its military goals. But it's not enough. The only option we have is to pile more pressure on Russia, provide more support to Ukraine, and prepare for the day after. Honourable members, more pressure on Russia means more sanctions and continued work to address circumvention, including dismantling the shadow fleet. On sanctions, like I said, we are now working on the 19th package and collecting input from the member states. We are also coordinating with our partners because the impact of the international coordinated sanctions is much stronger than the EU is acting alone. Our message to Russia is simple. The war is not winnable. Leave the battlefield and come to the table with Ukraine. When this happens, Russia must not be allowed to rearm and re-attack. We have been there before. And Putin has made no secret that Ukraine is just the start. Putin wants to re-establish Russia's pre-1991 Soviet sphere of influence. But the West is united in providing security guarantees to Ukraine. There are now serious pledges on the table of the coalition of the willing. That is why, a day after the coalition of the willing why the day after the coalition of the willing met last week, Putin threatened attacks on any Western presence on the ground, including peacekeepers. This is a serious escalation from Russia and directly undermines European security. Russia does not have a say how we defend ourselves. Honourable members, that is why the European Union will keep doing its part to protect the security of our continent. Work is undergoing under three main pillars. First, the European Union has already trained close to 80,000 Ukrainian soldiers. We are the largest training provider of Ukraine armed forces. And we have also started working on changing the mandate of our mission, so that we can also train soldiers in Ukraine. The strongest security guarantee is a strong Ukrainian army. Second, the European Union will also keep supporting internal security and resilience in Ukraine through our civilian mission. We have already supported Ukraine's police force and helped strengthen the rule of law in the country. And today there are many more challenges to address, including those related to war. And third, we will keep strengthening Ukraine's defence industry, including helping Ukraine produce more military hardware in the European Union. The EU is already actively encouraging member states to team up with Ukraine to support them and learn from Ukraine's war experience. And we are steadily integrating Ukraine into European defence industrial base, including incentivising joint procurement through SAFE. Honourable members, Ukraine's accession to the European Union is something that gives hope to the Ukrainian people, the possibility to live free and prosper again. Ukraine has already shown a remarkable evolution in its reforms, even in the midst of war, but my colleague will talk about that more. Accession is a merit-based process and Ukraine merits progress. It is time to open negotiations on Cluster 1. The war will end, and when it does, Ukraine will recover and Russia will pay for the damage it has done. Russian sovereign assets should remain immobilised until Russia stops its war of aggression against Ukraine and compensates Ukraine for the billions of euros of damage it has caused and keeps causing. This is what the European Council has stated. It is essential that we deliver on this commitment. Honourable members, what Russia may have thought inevitable is far from it. Russia has not broken Ukraine's resolve, and it must not break ours. For those who don't, Ukraine's security is European security, and so long as Russia pursues its illegal war, we must continue to fight. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And the next speaker is our rapporteur on the reports on Ukraine for 2023 and 2024, Kaja Kallas. The floor is yours, please.
Madam President, colleagues, High Representative, Enlargement Commissioner, we have a joint debate this morning. I'd like to thank the High Representatives for her clear statement on the most recent Russian terrorist attack. Russia wants a final victory on Ukraine. The unprovoked and unjust war of aggression has not just brought death and destruction over a sovereign country, it's an attack about the fundamental values of freedom and democracy in Europe. This war must be ended, but peace hasn't been brought about by words alone. Russia has made unserious suggestions and has just wanted to continue its war. An unconditional ceasefire is a condition for any serious peace negotiations. If this is not the case, we must continue our material and financial support for Ukraine so that the country can maintain its right to self-defense. Ukraine is not just defending its territory, it's also European values. Ukraine was attacked because they wanted to have this European journey towards the rule of law and democracy. Either we defend a united Europe, or we go back to the Soviet Gulag. We support Ukraine in its reform process, which is is set out in the annex to the Ukraine facility. We have a lever because the figures are linked to the to meeting these quarterly tasks. If they're not met, the payments are cut. There can be setbacks or mistakes in this reform process, but the ripeness of society is at a stage so that such mistakes can be corrected by pressure from society. I think the reaction of civil society to the attempt to put the National Anti-Corruption Office under national control. There were protests on the streets, and the original state of affairs was reinstated, and that was a good thing. We see considerable progress which has been brought about by the insistence of the international community. Ukraine must continue its reforms to strengthen its democratic institutions, to get closer to the EU's foreign and security policy, and to fight corruption. There is essential for accession to the EU. It is also essential for the rule of law for its own population. Independent justice and proper procedures being strengthened. We call for proper due process. Parliamentarian pluralism should be maintained, and a constructive dialogue between the political groups in the Verkhovna Rada. All limits on foreign trips should be removed. The European Council made a historic decision to start accession negotiations. The first meeting on that took place in January 24. We should continue with that without any blockades. We call on all member states to act constructively to honour the will of Ukraine to move towards the EU. We must have negotiations so that we can make rapid progress so that the Ukraine can be admitted. Let's send a clear signal together. Ukraine belongs in the European family, and we'll do everything so that it takes its place in the European Union as soon as possible. With good reforms, Ukraine can reach this goal more quickly. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much. And now we come to the Commission, and Commissioner Kroes, please, the floor is yours.
Madam President, dear honourable members of the European Parliament, I would like to begin with a big thank you and deepest gratitude to this House for your resolute commitment and continued support to Ukraine. Your strong voice has been a source of strength in Kiev. They need it. It is a beacon of hope that Ukraine's sacrifices are not in vain. And let me in particular thank you, dear Mr. Gala, the rapporteur on Ukraine, for your work in steering this House positions forward with clarity, conviction and optimism. Today, as we consider the Commission's enlargement report for 23 and 24, and as we look ahead to soon 2025 report, already in preparation, we must remind ourselves what is truly at stake. Ukraine's path to accession is a matter of survival, of sovereignty and of a long-term security, and this not only for Ukraine but for Europe as a whole. Ukraine has chosen this path freely and legitimately. It is what Ukrainians are fighting for, day after day, night after night, under continuous attacks. Their choice is clear: a future anchored in peace, stability and prosperity, a future within the EU family. But it is not an easy road. While heavy fighting continues, Russian brutal attacks on civilian targets has been intensified. As we know, on Sunday, Russia struck the cabinet of ministers building in Kiev for the first time, a direct attack on a seat of Ukraine's government. And of course, we know that this attack was not an accident. It was a message. Russia doesn't want peace. Russia fears Ukraine's European aspirations and dismisses democracy. That is why our response must be resolute and united. Despite this brutal war, Ukraine has advanced steadily on reforms. The Commission's assessment shows progress across key areas such as energy, customs and foreign and security policy. That is a clear demonstration of determination, but accession is not only about ticking boxes. It is about transforming a state and society to guarantee the rule of law, the fight against corruption, the independence of institutions and a functioning democracy, meaning following the Copenhagen criteria. This requires the whole of Ukraine, government, civil society, stakeholders and particularly the Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine. We saw in July, and Mr. Galla, you have mentioned it, how fragile progress can be. Attempts to undermine the independence of the anti-corruption bodies, NABO and SAPO, were deeply troubling. We were crystal clear such moves are unacceptable. These institutions are the very foundations of the Ukraine that Ukrainians want to build, transparent, accountable, European. On 31st of July, Ukraine corrected course. Key safeguards were restored. Other measures, including the appointment of the head of the Economic Security Bureau, we waited for months for this, were unblocked. And these are positive steps. And that calls for the vigilance of every actor for the sake of Ukraine's European future. In this context, the Commission assesses Ukraine has met conditions to open Cluster 1, while we encourage them to continue work on implementation of roadmaps and especially on action plan for minorities. At this crucial moment, a strong sign of support is more than symbolic. It is strategic and it is deserved. And I would love to stress that it is not true what some people claim, that we are stuck in the accession process. From the technical point of view, we are working really a lot, and in a few weeks we will be in the position to be able to open all the clusters. But the decision has to be made in the Council. So I call the Council to decide on the opening of the Cluster 1 without further delays, on the only legitimate ground, and this is the merits of Ukraine. Much has already been achieved together, and together we must continue. Honourable members, Ukraine's EU accession is the most powerful guarantee of its security. Each reform consolidated, each cluster opened, each step forward is a step that locks Ukraine more firmly into our common European home. It is also a signal to Moscow. Ukraine's European destiny is irreversible. Let us not underestimate what this means. Ukrainians are defending not only their territory but also freedom and democracy in Europe. The least we can do is match their courage with our political determination. We will continue to support Ukraine in advancing reforms, particularly in the rule of law. And we will continue to ensure that the accession process remains merit-based, credible and predictable. And I count on this House to remain fully engaged to encourage all political forces in Ukraine to work constructively and to remind all Member States that the time for hesitation has passed. Ukraine's future is in Europe. Its people have chosen this path with courage, with sacrifice and with hope. Now it is for us, all of us, to be up to these circumstances, to help make this choice irreversible and to ensure that one day soon Ukraine takes its rightful place also in this House, in the European Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we will begin with a round of speakers on behalf of the political groups, beginning with Mr. Pekka Toveri for 1 minute, please.
Madam President, dear colleagues, I totally agree with Commissioner Kroes and in her very wise words. Europe is not safe before Ukraine is safe, and to safeguard Ukraine's safety and freedom, it is crucial that Ukraine can join the EU. Even though Ukraine is fighting existential war to survive, it has been able to take big steps towards its future EU membership. It's extremely important that this positive development can continue, that we stay in our course to accept Ukraine to the Union as fast as possible when Ukraine is fulfilling the requirements. At the same time, we have member states like Hungary, which are working with Russia to sabotage and prevent Ukraine's EU integration. This is totally unacceptable. EU Parliament, Commission and Council must use all tools and pressure to prevent Hungary or any other member state to sabotage our joint future with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Thijs Reuten for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, President. With this report, Parliament sends a strong signal. Ukraine is part of our European family, and our support for its accession is unwavering. Despite the war, Ukrainian authorities continue to deliver on reforms, and we recognise the progress, but also the difficulties. As true partners, we offer honest, constructive recommendations to Ukraine and to the Commission, so momentum is not lost. But let's be clear, accession is overshadowed by Ukraine's, and therefore our, existential fight against Russia's aggression. And here, it's time to be blunt. We see the same cycle. The US pretends that there will be additional pressure. Putin pretends to talk. Europe hesitates. Pressure fades. Then Putin escalates his violence. And repeat. Ukraine suffers while defending itself and us. And we need to be honest. An unchecked Russia would be a disaster for the whole Union, from Poland to Ireland, from Finland to Greece. And too many member states still fail to face the truth. We talk in circles. Too much talk about Trump, too little action and too little leadership. Let's not fool anyone. This war is not over. Ukraine is brilliantly defending itself and holding the line. It is not losing. But there is no fair and just peace on the horizon, because Putin doesn't want it. Every signal says the opposite. And there's no point talking about security guarantees when we cannot pressure Putin into wanting peace. So our strategy must change. More pressure, more weapons, stronger sanctions, real enforcement, seizing the assets, the Russian assets. Avoiding risk now only guarantees greater risk later, and the level of our support determines the level of Ukrainian suffering. We know what to do. We can do more than we think as Europeans, and it's time for Europe not just to support, but to lead. That is how we achieve a just, fair and lasting peace. Thank you to the rapporteur for the cooperation, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Ms. Kinga Gál for 1.5 minutes, please.
Madam President, High Representative, Commissioner, when you hear proposals that the EU should send troops to Ukraine, then as a mother of 5 boys, I am scared. Statements like that bring war closer to the European Union, and it will not bring peace to Ukraine. Europe is weaker than ever before. And despite the peace efforts of the US President, Ukraine is suffering and experiencing the worst force of Russian aggression, and we are bringing forward resolutions, but there is no action because we do not recognize certain facts. This war will not be decided on the battlefield. This war can only be decided in the field of diplomacy. Enlargement cannot be mixed with security and defense. The Commission is pretending that Ukraine already fulfills the criteria, and Ukraine is far from being ready. This is not an enlargement policy. This is a political mistake that will have devastating consequences. It is especially cynical towards candidate states in the Western Balkans. It is in the interest of the European Union that these decisions can only be made unanimously. No decision can be made over the head of the people, because this is about what kind of EU we bequeath to our successors. A weakened Europe or a Europe that can stand up for its own interests. If we do not face reality, frankly, there will be devastating consequences for us.
Next speaker is Mikhail Dvorchuk for 1 minute, please.
Pani Przewodnicząca, koleżanki.
Madam President, colleagues, the report we're debating today is not only an analytical document, it's also proof of determination of Ukraine, where despite the ongoing Russian aggression, they've been defending themselves, but also continuing to adjust their institution and mechanism, adjusting to EU requirements. The report points to progress in fighting corruption and reforming the judiciary. But there are also challenges. The reform of state administration, local administration, better independence of judges, and support to civic society. For Poland, it's important after 2020, they started issuing permits for the exhumation of Poles killed during World War II on Ukrainian territory. It's important for our bilateral relations, but also in view of Christian values, which are the base values of Europe. The membership of Ukraine is in the strategic interest of the entire continent. It would give us more security. A stronger Europe is a Europe with Ukraine. So it is our duty to show solidarity and build a common future and to support Ukraine in its fight on its path of reforms. Thank you.
Okay, is Mr. Petras Austravicius for 1.5 minutes, please.
Madam Chair, dear Kaja, dear Marta, dear colleagues. Russia's unprovoked and illegal aggression against Ukraine, which has been ongoing for 42 months, has undermined the foundations of European security. To stop Russia, we must create a security and defense mechanism which is stronger than its militaristic ambitions. To deter the aggressor, Europe has no choice but to extend the European security system to Ukrainian territory and strengthen its defense forces. Applying Newton's principle of physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Security guarantees will be effective if they are genuine and sufficient. A secure sky over Ukraine, the deployment of EU member states' military forces on its territory, and further military assistance to Ukraine are only part of the security guarantees that can truly deliver. Russia must pay military reparations to Ukraine. I warmly welcome the 9th of July decision of the European Court of Human Rights in the case of Ukraine and the Netherlands versus Russia, which found Russia guilty of systematic violations in Ukraine, including the downing of MH17. This court decision provides the legal basis for using Russia's frozen assets to compensate the Ukrainian people for immense damages and losses. Security and justice are an integral part of European life. Let us extend them to the people of Ukraine now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Sergei Lagodinsky for 1.5 minutes, please.
Es muss klar sein, es muss uns.
Let's be clear. Let it be clear to all of us. There will be no peace without peace guarantees, security guarantees. You can't have a democracy. You can't invest. You can't secure a country if there is a threat of military coercion by its neighbour. The EU must step in to ensure that the US provides more clarity so that there are no more Russian drones, and to show that we are not on our own when it comes to standing with Ukraine. So what do we need to do? European presence would not mean war. It would mean peace. It's part of diplomacy. If after we've ensured peace and we are present on the ground, that doesn't mean war, it means peace. Second, we need the US to be involved. It is not fair. It cannot be that Brussels is under more pressure than Moscow. It cannot be that we have to also fend off disinformation. No. the link between Russia and China is something that needs to be acknowledged by the US and other partners. It is up to us to ensure that Ukraine is safe, but the same applies to the US. And then Germany and German leadership needs to be clear. The times are over when Germany could stand back when it came to peace. Now Germany needs to step up. We can't hesitate and wring our hands, and that means that we have to have German and European soldiers present when we secure peace.
And the next speaker is Özlem Demirel for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Ms. Kallas, it's full of pride that we've announced the 19th package of sanctions. What are the measures that you've announced when it comes to the genocide by Israel on the Palestinians? When will you suspend the EU association agreement? On that front, your double standards become very clear. Colleagues, for 3 years now, we hear that in Ukraine it's a war of autocracy against democracy. Of course, the Putin regime is autocratic. But is it true that Mr. Zelensky and Ukraine is so democratic? Mr. Zelensky is not just known for his corrupt show in the Ukraine. There's an undermining of union rights, and opposition parties have been banned. Never mind what you think about the parties. What about democracy? What about employees' rights? What about unions? All that, colleagues, makes it clear that it's not about democracy. It's about hard geopolitics. To be clear, if you're saying before you're at the negotiating table that you're sending troops to Ukraine, Ms. Kallas, as you and Ms. Kallas and Ms. von der Leyen have said, you don't want peace. The people in Europe are in favour of peace in Ukraine and Europe and throughout the world.
The next speaker is Hans Neuhoff for 1 minute, please.
Frau Vizepräsidentin.
Vice President, the only real security guarantee for Ukraine would be for it to return to neutrality. The EU claims that it is striving for a ceasefire, but the EU is demanding that the EU and NATO states surveil and monitor. And this is just an incentive for Russia to occupy more Ukrainian territory. Why are you acting in these two different directions? One, we have to understand that every compromise with Russia is a geopolitical loss of face. Second, the EU leaders want to act as leaders, but they have their own motivations. Three, you are driven by a psychological mindset, which is that you're too invested to quit, you're in too deep. So, colleagues, President, wake up before everything is lost and squandered.
Speakers on behalf of the political groups. From now on, I'm going to be much more strict on speaking time. We have a long debate ahead of us, and we also have a guest speaker at noon, so we have to stick to the time. However, I will open up for the blue card option as well, so if you want to say something, you can use that option. And the next speaker is Raza Yukna-Viitiene for 1 minute, please.
Dear colleagues, let's be clear. Ukraine and its European future are as important to European security today as the United States was to Europe in the decades after World War II. All normal people want peace. However, peace at the expense of Ukraine and on Russia's terms could be the beginning of a major catastrophe for all of Europe. Europe needs a strategy for Ukraine if Trump's bid to end the war fails. We need an European plan to lead the fight for Ukraine and our future. Its core is to help contain Russia and integrate Ukraine into a pan-European defence alliance. What must we do today?
provide significant greater financial support for Ukraine's defense. This is money for our own defense as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, also for sticking to the time. Next speaker is Tobias Kremer for 1 minute, please.
Colleagues, I want to begin by thanking Donald Trump. Seriously. Because this summer he's disproven once and for all a zombie theory that some in this House have been riding like a dead horse and have been riding again today, that if only we accommodated Putin, only reached out to him, we could have an easy peace. That's what Trump tried, and he failed. He has given everything to Putin. He rolled out the red carpet. He made concessions, and what did he get? Nothing. Nothing at all, no ceasefire, no compromise, only more attacks, more escalation, more aggression, and in a despicable mockery of diplomatic solutions, Putin bombed our own embassy in Kiev, endangering the very men and women who sacrifice their life and who dedicate their life to diplomatic solutions. So what more do we need to finally understand? That the only language that Putin speaks is strength, strength, and strength. So let's finally show some strength and strengthen Ukraine's armed forces, strengthen our sanctions regime, and strengthen by Western unity by showing European rather than Trumpian leadership. Appeasement has failed. Now it's time to get real about strength in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me repeat, please stick to your speaking time, also in respect of your colleagues. Next speaker is Pierre-Romain Thionnet for 1 minute, please.
Permettez-moi tout d'abord de rendre hommage aux nombreux...
First of all, I want to pay tribute to the many civilians in Ukraine who have died. We see that this was caused by Russian forces. Now, we have these plans, and they're all very good, but these plans just castles in the air. The logic is good, but all of this applies to the post-war period. This war continues, and Donbass is still under threat. These plans show our own weakness and incompetence or impotence. We would not be able to do it without the US green light and their intelligence. But our plans also show that we were unable to prevent this invasion. We were unable to stop this conflict. But we will act when the conflict ends, if we're allowed to. The world is getting more and more difficult, and we have to accept that.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Gambino for 1 minute, please.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, after years where Moscow was setting its sights on Kiev, well, I do think that we're coming close to a solution. We have the bravery of the Ukrainian people, and Europe is standing behind Ukraine, as Prime Minister Maloney recently said. We need to see guarantees of security inspired by NATO's Article 5. We need to ensure that there's a swift response to new attacks. And yet we're still facing a dramatic situation. Russia has recently launched a drone barrage against Kiev, causing deaths and devastation. And in the face of that, we cannot afford to be discouraged. We need to move away from the spiral of hatred and move towards dialogue, as a wise man once said. And that must very much be our North Star. Peace, freedom and security for Ukraine. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ms. Strack-Zimmermann for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to thank you too for your efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine was attacked in an unimaginable extent. Mrs. von der Leyen's plane was jammed. EU representation was destroyed in Kiev. What else has to happen, ladies and gentlemen? I hear from the coalition of the willing, but I hear national egoism. If the EU wants to play a role in future in the theatre of this world, and not just be a dwarf, to be a giant, with the US and China and alongside Russia, otherwise we have no chance. That means that we, all of us, in our home, we must go back to our nations, our regions, whether whether in the government or in opposition, we must make things clear. We are all responsibility for 450 million people in peace and who want to live in peace and prosperity. The EU must be present and must not dodge.
There's a blue card. Do you want to take it? There's a blue card from Mr. Sieper. Mr. Sieper, which language?
Rechts oder links?
Yeah, you know him.
Ach, da.
Guten Tag, Frau Strack.
Ms. Strack-Zimmermann, thank you for accepting the blue card. President, in line with the rules of procedure, I want to be able to answer Ms. Strack-Zimmermann's answer. Madame, you said that we cannot go on a national path alone, and you said that we have to go back home and we must speak to our own governments, but there's a concept that only one European government has done thus far, and that is that you would allow our EU citizens to go and fight in the Ukraine as soldiers. Poland has done that. Would you agree? Should everyone, and every EU national who wants to, should they be allowed to go and fight in the Ukrainian army?
I think every state must be aware that it's part of the EU. It's not just getting the giveaways, getting the money. It must also show the responsibility. And the details of that, we should discuss that here. That's what it's about. I see countries, they talk a lot, but very little happens. Others do something. That's not enough. If we want to be taken seriously in this, if you look at what's happening in the Pacific and what Russia is doing, or how the American president has reacted, we have a chance if we act together. That is our strength, and that's what we should be doing.
I have 30 seconds, but I mean 30 seconds.
Ich stimme allem zu, was Sie gesagt haben.
I agree with what you said. I just wish you'd answered my question in concrete terms, but I think we both agree that we need to fight further for Ukraine's independence.
The speaker is Mr. Sinkevicius for 1 minute, please.
Dear High Representative, dear Commissioner, dear colleagues, Ukrainian cities are under the heaviest bombardment in months, and that just after the red carpet was rolled out to Putin in Alaska. Power stations, hospitals, homes are being hit night after night. And yet, Ukraine still finds the strength to push forward with reforms, from justice to decentralization, because Ukrainian people know their future is European. Last week in Paris, 26 nations pledged to form a reassurance force to protect Ukraine once there is a peace agreement. This is not a theory anymore. It is Europe showing it can act even when Washington hesitates. Dear colleagues, let's be honest. Moscow has zero interest in peace. It wants time to rearm, not to reconcile. And that's why EU must lead. Our responsibility is to deliver weapons fast, close all the loopholes in sanctions, and keep Ukraine's accession path alive, while giving it real security guarantees, and that will deter next possible attacks. If we get this right, we won't be protecting just Ukraine.
Thank you very
we will
much.
be protecting.
Dear colleagues, please stick to your speaking time. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. David for 1 minute, please.
Chair, peace is something that cannot be torn in parts. Peace is conditional upon security guarantees for all. A party to a conflict whose security guarantees are not secured will certainly feel threatened, and that will have an impact on its behavior. Such a condition will mean that the conflict will continue. I'm afraid that this is what it is all about. A peace that is acknowledged to be fair by one party only is not a peace. Such a peace will not be acknowledged only if it was a post-capitulation peace. But that needs to be acknowledged by the defeated party. I do not know anybody who could possibly think that Russia is close to capitulation. If politics is the art of the possible, then whatever the European Commission, European Union is doing is not politics. On conditions enforced by the European Union, a peace cannot be achieved, and human losses and damage will continue to be caused, with the risk of starting a third world war.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Perez, but I don't see him, so I think that we continue with Mr. Sterber for 1 minute, please.
Dzień dobry Polsko.
Good morning Poland, good morning Europe. Today is the day of good news. The Safe Fund has been granted to Poland, and Poland is going to receive most funds for armament. This is an initiative from the times of the Polish presidency. We do, as Donald Tusk says, we not speak. We need deterrence and we need readiness. We need strong defense potential, and there we need to work together with the Ukrainian drone industry. Russian-Belarusian military exercises, Zapad, are starting. The fund also means the construction of the aerial defense systems, including the drone system. And here, the Ukrainians have reached perfection. But another important thing, in the report, we do not forget about history, yet investing in the future. The Volyn massacre needs to be commemorated. Exhumation have started, also burials. I'm really happy that this has been included in the report. Thank you very much.
Here is Ms. Fritzon for 1 minute, please.
Tack, fru talman. Ja, världsordningen är I gungning.
President, if we look at the world order, it is in flux. And we are facing our toughest test in decades. Ukraine is not just fighting for itself, but for all of us. In recent days, there has been a major drone attack on Ukraine, and a government building in Kyiv was hit. A mother and her child lost her life. There were other casualties. Yet we see that the EU and EU member states continue to shirk their responsibility when it comes to Ukraine. We see that there is a path forward, but many member states are lagging behind. We, as the Social Democrats, are demanding the following. We're demanding that more needs to be done. We think every member state needs to step up by the end of the year and spend at least 0.5% of military spending on Ukraine. Slava Ukraina.
Nachi for 1.5 minutes, please.
Nella mia vita non avrei.
I never thought that I would ever back up someone so fervently in favour of the Green Deal and Brussels technocracy. But Commissioner Teresa Ribeiro was right about one thing. The European Union has failed. It's failed on tariffs, so brilliantly negotiated by Ms. von der Leyen. It's failed on immigration, filling Europe with the most desperate souls on earth. It's failed on energy, which we used to buy cheaply from the Russians, and today we are spending 700 billion to buy that same energy from Washington. Europe has failed on weapons, which we currently buy from the United States in order to give them to Ukraine. And the EU has failed on war as well, thinking that economic sanctions would be enough, with anti-corruption declarations and a lot of propaganda. And Europe is still facing on peace, giving up on a fair peace that could be obtained quickly, and turning people's minds with the idea of a fair peace which has never existed in the history of humanity. And Europe is failing too on security guarantees. There is no guarantee without the risk of having to go to war to defend it if necessary. And I'm saying this as a firm patriot. Not one drop of Italian blood will be spilled for this war, which does not defend our country and does not defend our national interests. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Bilan for 1 minute, please.
Madam President, High Representative, the ECR group has always been clear there can be no long-lasting peace without justice, and no justice without Ukraine's full territorial integrity and sovereignty. And so any so-called compromise that rewards the Russian aggression will be seen as weakness and will only embolden the imperialist regime. We must stand with Ukraine, not only out of solidarity, but because their victory is paramount to European security. In light of this, I applaud newly inaugurated Polish President Nawrocki's recent success in obtaining clear security guarantees from US President Donald Trump, a powerful signal for the entire region. And I would like to thank you very much for raising the issue of genocide involved in this resolution. The Ukrainian side must finally start exhuming the murdered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Bana for 1 minute, please. Mr. Bana, please. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I stand before you not just as a European, but as a Romanian as well. My country shared the longest EU border with Ukraine. We are not just neighbours. We are brothers and sisters who have sheltered millions from the storms of Russian aggression. We have seen their fear in their eyes and heard the sirens firsthand. We talk of peace, and we must. But let us be clear, a peace dictated by the aggressor is not peace, it's surrender. And a just peace is not a negotiation over how much of a sovereign nation is fed to the wolves. That peace will never hold without real ironclad security guarantees. Vague promises are an invitation for future aggression. Ukraine needs more than our resolutions. It needs our resolves. So I ask you, look east for this chamber. See the courage of a people fighting for their very values we represent. History will not forgive us if we answer their sacrifice without hesitations. Let our legacy be that when tyranny challenged our continent, we did not flinch, we acted, we secured a just peace.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Saudkowska-Hernik for 1 minute, please.
Polska przyjęła 1 milion Ukraińców. Poland has accepted 1 million of Ukrainians fleeing war. They were provided with social benefits, access to state health security and education in Polish schools. Our aid to Ukraine is worth 3 billion euro, and we also made available to Ukraine our planes and our military vehicles. Nevertheless, this is all met with a lack of gratitude, and Ukraine does not want to condemn the murders committed by UPA during World War II on Polish population. The cult of Bandera is flourishing. On Polish streets, we can see tens of Ukrainian young men who, instead of standing up for their country, are just partying around. And at the same time, we need to confront the competition of Ukrainian carriers. So it is high time to show how Ukraine responds ungratefully to our dedication. So no against Ukraine.
Dear colleagues, is there anyone left here in this House who actually believes that Putin wants peace? If there are such people, they're either naive or friends of the Kremlin. Russia has intensified its devastating attacks on Ukrainian civilians, its infrastructure, and even on its seat of government. This is the Kremlin way of mocking the EU and US attempts to stop this war. The only road to peace is to increase pressure on the aggressor and to intensify sanctions against Russia. Everyone must be aware that Ukraine is the security guarantee for Europe against the imperial ambitions of the Kremlin. Therefore, it's very important to continue arming Ukraine, to make sure that Ukraine has access to a strong, robust, modern, well-trained and well-equipped army and a well-developed military industry. And the main thing, we must provide the maximum available support to Ukrainian integration into Europe, and we must start accession talks. Slava Ukraine.
And the next speaker is Mr. Benifei for 1 minute, please.
Il tappeto rosso americano per il criminale.
The US rolled out the red carpet for the war criminal Putin, leading only to more bombs over Kyiv, killing innocent civilians. According to Trump, the war should have finished 24 hours after the US event, and yet we're still here discussing the murderous events led by an autocrat. We've wasted enough time. We need to see a tangible step forward in using frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine and to ensure that those who pay are those who caused all of this. The international community must come together in setting out fair conditions for a sustainable and safe peace that's respectful of the Ukrainian people and Europe, of which Ukraine is a part, and to rebuild an international order that is rules-based and not on spheres of influence and arrogance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Demeter for 1 minute, please.
I would like to raise 2 points. First of all, we would like to ask that when you work on your Ukraine policy, you finally take the economic consequences into account. Europe has spent 169 billion euros on the war so far, and the new 7-year budget would add another 100 billion, including indirect expenditure. Up to 20% of the budget could go to Ukraine. So this debate is not just about Ukraine. If the European economy stagnates, these funds will have to be taken from elsewhere. That is why you want to cut cohesion funds and agriculture. It is not possible to help Ukraine if the European economy collapses in the meantime. And one more thing, I'd like to ask the High Representative not to remain silent if Ukraine bombs energy infrastructure that is critical to individual member states, especially if the Ukrainian president admits that they bombed the pipeline deliberately for the purpose of exerting pressure. That is what happened to the Druzhba oil pipeline. So all we're asking is that the flags of member states be flown alongside the flag of Ukraine.
Next for 1 minute, please.
Hello. Before the debate, we talked about Ukraine. Since then, lots of missiles have been detected at Ukraine. Many people have died, including children. But a good thing has happened in this time, and we have to thank Mr. Trump for that. He showed the whole world how diplomacy works or does not work with Russia. Each negotiation with Russia means new attacks on Ukraine, because Russia's policy is very simple. Talking for it is weakness, and Russia's borders and frontiers are where it is stopped. They have declared it. So only the fear of losing is something that can grant us a victory, and only a strong military army, a strong military industry can ensure guarantees for Europe. Ukraine is part of Europe, so Europe is part of Ukraine. Thank you. Pans.
Thank you very much, dear Vice President, dear Commissioner. Madam Kroes, you said rightly, yes, it's a strong sign that Ukraine comes to Europe. It's a strong signal also to Moscow. But there are other signals to Moscow from the very left and from the very right. These signals they are parrots. They say the same as Putin, and we just heard it. And then Mr. Gall, she already left, she talked about her boys. But, you know, when Putin kills children, she shrugs her shoulders. She doesn't care. You know, think about the children in Ukraine. They can't go to school. Think about them. They can't go to a hospital because he's also bombing hospitals. You don't care about that, and we know that. On the other hand, we know that if Ukraine flourishes, that's a great sign that part of the European Union, it's better life, and it's also democracy is a better life. And that's also our sign to them. And one message to the people in Ukraine, there's a huge majority in favor of you. Don't listen to those extremists. There's a huge majority for you, and we will fight for you. We will work for you. Let's work together for a better Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Volgin for 1 minute, please.
Esteemed colleagues, there are several key topics on which supporters of Ukraine's swift accession to the European Union have not said a word. Firstly, the endemic corruption, which Ukrainians themselves say is the biggest problem in the country other than the war. Recently, President Zelensky attempted to gain control over the two main anti-corruption bodies, whereby those bodies would have been made powerless. Secondly, no one talks about the persecution against the clergymen of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Without any evidence, they are wrongly accused of being Russian spies and are persecuted, detained and convicted. Thirdly, European institutions are deafeningly silent statement about the forceful recruitment of young people on the streets and the bus stops of Ukrainian cities so that they can be deployed at the front line, often without any substantial training. Fourthly, there are no discussions at all about the issue of subsidy loss for many farmers in the EU member states, because those subsidies will go to their Ukrainian counterparts when the Ukraine joins the European Union. Silence does not solve those problems. On the contrary, it aggravates them. Thank you.
And the next speaker is Mr. Pascual de la Parte for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, High Commissioner. Congratulations to the rapporteur on the report on Ukraine. I think that it's due time for the European Union to cobble together a comprehensive initiative of peace for Ukraine. During the summer, we have been attending a lot of meetings and encounters in Alaska, in Washington, but I think that the people, our public opinion outside, need to have a clear idea what the European Union stands for Ukraine. We have to put together, to cobble together an integral, comprehensive peace plans together with our Ukrainian friends. The main idea is that Russia cannot win this war. We have to support our Ukrainian friends not to defend themselves, but to win the war, which is something quite different. And for that, we have to promise them a quick integration in the European Union. We have to strengthen and reinforce the armed forces and to integrate the army in our European defence infrastructure. Only with these clear messages we can set up a clear deterrence against Putin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Vice President Javi Lopez for 1 minute, please.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, President. Well, the brutal and illegal invasion carried out by Russia against Ukraine carries on. What we see in Ukraine is a heroic defense of the territorial integrity of Ukraine and in defense of European values as well. But what did we see over the summer? Well, we saw how Putin had been rehabilitated on the world stage with a red carpet. We saw that Putin was able to maneuver what he wanted, which was to save time. And what we saw was that Europe was not getting the support it needed from the US. I think that what this indicates is that we need to move away from our dependency in terms of security and defence. The EU needs to be strategic, and without that we're not going to be able to defend our sovereignty. So we need to improve the competitiveness of our industries, and we need to redouble our efforts in supporting Ukraine. Why? Because the security of the future of Ukraine cannot depend on the vanity of US leaders. Thank you.
Is Ms. Steger for 1 minute, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Kallas, I must ask you, like Ms. von der Leyen, if what do you want to achieve? Do you want to draw Europe into the war? Is that your goal? You want? You talk about 10,000 of people for so-called peace troops. You talk about troops on the ground, which weren't seen as a provocation by Russia. The German defense minister or US Trump don't want to know anything about that. Your so-called peace troops as real as the Russian attack on GPS systems of Ms. von der Leyen's plane. And fake news. You talk about customs negotiations, and now you're sitting in Russia, in Washington, when the serious negotiations are taking place. Do you know what message you're giving, Ms. von der Leyen, like you, Ms. Kallas, in future? And I can tell you now, when it comes to talks or peace negotiations, you'll be left out. Why? Because nobody takes you seriously, and that's because of your politics.
The speaker is Mr. Vondra for 1 minute, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, effort to draw Vladimir Putin to the negotiation table led nowhere. Our experience proves that Russia understands only one language, and that is of power, not the nice talks which we have here. Therefore, we must follow two goals at the same time. Firstly, arming Ukraine and rearming ourselves. With the EU machinery, any project can become a bureaucratic nightmare. We must make the development, production and distribution of weaponry in the EU as simple as possible. Don't forget, our enemy is not environmental considerate. And secondly, keep the relations with the US. Gigantic fines of Google will not improve our relationship. In this sense, a pragmatic Maroš Šefčovič is doing more sensible work than the ideologue Teresa Ribera. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Woutmans for 1 minute, please.
Good morning, dear colleagues. It's very good that there is a coalition of the willing who want to provide Ukraine with security guarantees. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Europe has increased its military help for Ukraine, but it's far from enough. Last week we all saw it. Russia launched one of its deadliest attacks on Ukraine. The Russian economy is not collapsing as predicted. Our sanctions, colleagues, don't bite. Don't bite hard enough. We are now on our 19th sanction package. We are slow, the implementation remains weak, and we lack a central authority for the enforcement. We are also, and we know that, the Commission knows it, Kaja knows it, we are too soft for third countries and for companies who still supply Russia with chips and other precision tools that allows them to build strategic weapons. So please, colleagues, let us strengthen Ukraine to the point where they can win the peace. And to Commissioner Kos, I really want to say I appreciate your efforts for the enlargement, but I didn't hear anything on the reform of Europe. So please don't.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Wisela Lima for 1 minute, please.
For 3.5 years. For 3.5 years, the Ukrainians are woken every night by sirens. They've been burying their dead, killed by the Russian army for 3.5 years. A war against Ukraine which is completely unjustified. There's been no provocation. We will never forget the atrocities of Bucha. We continue to ask for civilian prisoners to be freed and for deported children to be brought back to Ukraine. We've decided to support the Ukraine for as long as it takes, and that's the minimum we can do, not just because we owe this support to our neighbours who have decided that they want to live freely and in democracy, like us, but they are also a rampart against an authoritarian regime that threatens us militarily and that is carrying out a hybrid war, a dangerous hybrid war against our democracies. We must therefore provide all the military support that we can to Ukraine. We must step up sanctions on Russia, and we must support Ukraine and bring it into the European Union family, as was promised.
Guzanina for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, dear Chair. Last weekend, Russia launched 818 drones against Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Putin is laughing in Moscow. President Trump sends mixed signals, one day promising peace, the next praising the leader of Russia. In Beijing, President Xi gave Putin yet again a global stage, and Europe were absent. Peace talks are shaped by others. The days when trade power gave us leverage is over. This has given Putin a clear table to push harder and further crush Ukraine's fight for freedom. As said in the report, Ukraine is the single most important area of EU activity in the external relations realm. Dear Chair, if Europe is not at the table, we are on the menu.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Ferenek for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Chair. Tisztelt kollégák!
Dear colleagues, it is important that today's debate finally has the word peace in it. And that is important for people living in Europe and in Ukraine. They all want peace because they have been suffering for too long. Suffering, but not only suffering, dying in the battlefield or during the military draft because of the inhumane treatment that they receive. The Hungarians living in the Zakarpattia Oblast of Ukraine also suffer from anti-Hungarian incidents. There is discrimination against them when they cross the border, when they try to cross the border, and this is in a country that wants to join the EU. The report is biased towards Ukraine and its pseudo-reforms, and calls on Hungary to ignore the Copenhagen criteria. That is unacceptable. Hungary is respectful of the enlargement conditions and is for minority rights. Enough of double standards.
Next speaker is Mr. Gutta for 1 minute, please.
Rien n'est fait, hélas, rien n'est joué, mais il...
No outcome yet, but it would appear that something is shifting. He's feeling concerned, looking at the ties, the close coming together of Russia and China. So it might appear that Donald Trump is realizing that he's going to need allies to face down the Russia-China alliance. Since the humiliation suffered by Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office, we, the European Union, have come together, joining up with the United Kingdom and invited along with us Canada, Australia, Japan and many other important democracies. We are setting up new alliances, shaping a new sphere of influence on the world stage. But of course, much remains to be done. Our security and the threats that Ukraine face demand much more from us.
Speaker is Ms. Sobko for 1 minute, please.
Hi, thank you very much. I will speak in Croatian. Poštovana
Madam Commissioner, I regret the fact that High Representative Kaja Kallas could not come here. I would like to welcome Minister of Justice of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this shows how important it is to make sure that Bosnia and Herzegovina survives and to accede to the Union. This is a problem that we will see in the future because the left parties do not see the interest for them to be here. When the aggression against Ukraine started, they were here. Where are they now? I would like to congratulate Mr. Gahler for fighting for years for this. And now we finally have a report on Ukraine. But accession is the only way to defend Europe. And to all my colleagues who spoke here and said that we need to change our tactics towards the US, this is not true. Without the US, Croatia could not be saved. Croatia had to defend itself. Without the US, the president cut off the speaker.
Next speaker is Mr. Pizzula for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner, colleagues. When our peace efforts are responded to with a drone and missiles attack on the civilian infrastructure, government building and EU representation office, the conclusion should be clear to all. There is no genuine will from Putin to talk or act towards peace. While discussion on security guarantees are welcomed, there are more concrete actions we can do now. Bolder decisions related to immobilize the Russian state assets, energy independence from Russia, and to pursue it in general, to work on genuine and predictable partnership globally to support international law and Ukraine. Apart from military and economic support, we need sufficient assistance for Ukraine to strengthen its judiciary and the rule of law, while fighting corruption as rightfully underlined by the report. Progress in these areas is vital for Ukraine now. By defending itself, Ukraine is defending Europe. And by strengthening itself, the European Union can better support Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Altula for 1 minute, please.
Madam President, Commissioner, it was said that as the escalation of war and depicts the rise of a power, and when Russia sees us, he sees the fear in us, he sees a divided West, and he threatens. Yesterday, Risha, the deputy head of the Russian Security Council, threatened Finland with war. This is not play. We are close to a lost war in Europe. We have to mobilize the history of Europe. We've seen coalitions. We've seen the Great Northern War and others. It's important in this mobilization, for once, we take steps in time and succeed.
And the next speaker is Mr. Salini for 1 minute, please.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Some analysts have used an effective metaphor to describe the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. They have talked about a specific type of game. As far as Russia is concerned, a war economy is quite useful. So it's up to us to slow down, or rather to speed up the time that we're seeing in this conflict. We've had the sanctions that we have applied up until now, and then there's the matter of Ukraine's take on this game. What appears to be happening is that time is slowing down for Ukraine in terms of the action that it can implement. Both Ukraine's defence, Russia's attacks, well, all of that is just a proxy for Russia to attack Europe.
Please.
Dear colleagues, once again we need to stress that it's been Putin who has started this war of aggression against Ukraine, and it's Putin who doesn't want to end it. The attacks on Kyiv, including the government's building and the EU delegation, are the clearest reminder. The fact that Putin fiercely opposes the deployment of Western peacekeeping forces, even after a deal is reached, shows to everyone that his intention is not to stop, but to carry out his plan of total submission of Ukraine into the so-called Russian world. And for that, obviously he has the support of China, since Beijing wants a multipolar world based on spheres of influence dominated by regional hegemons. The initial attempt of the Trump administration to distance Moscow from Beijing has not borne fruits, and we should now continue to work with Washington on a careful design of secondary sanctions. Finally, it is imperative for Kyiv to avoid any backpedaling on European values and standards, and for us in Europe, it's imperative to unblock the EU accession negotiations with Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Mr. Tunin for 1 minute, please.
Madam President, to Commissioners, dear colleagues, it seems that we are waiting for the war in Ukraine to end on its own, or for President Trump or the Pope to bring it to an end. None of this has happened. The war will end when Putin realizes that he has nothing to gain on the battlefield. That is the reason for our unwavering support for Ukraine. Our support for Ukraine is the path towards peace. History teaches us a clear lesson. An aggressor does not stop by choice, but only when confronted with limits. The unity of this House is more important today than ever. Europe is stronger when we stand together. Our response must be clear. Putin will not stop on his own. Only together we can stop it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Maisiulis for 1 minute,
Thank you, Madam President. Not a single moment I believed in the goodwill of the aggressor and their willingness for peace. Never. We have to arm Ukraine, we have to rearm ourselves, and we need to apply the most advanced technologies to fight this hybrid war. The sanctions method should have given fruit earlier, and we need to move on with the accession negotiations as fast as possible. We see that 6,000 drones are being used to attack Ukraine, and we need to understand that we do not try to engage in warmongering, but we need to fight against this aggression, and we need to remain just. Slava Ukraini.
And finally, Mr. Perez, for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, President. I don't normally take the floor on debates like this. It's difficult for me to listen to the opinion of so many people. You know, can we be sincere for once? Can we say we don't really care about what's happening in Ukraine? We don't really care. What about the 5,000 Christians killed in Africa in the war there? We need to talk about the fact that we are puppets. We are puppets of powers outside of Europe. We are mere puppets. And that is the truth we have to face up to. You know, the US going to send troops to Europe, warheads in Europe? Let's just look at it. We are slaves. We are slaves to the US. We don't dare to criticize the US. Let's just point out that truth. Let's be sincere. Why don't we just be clear for once?
Very much. And now we come to the Catch the Eye. And the first on our list for Catch the Eye is Vytenis Povilas Andriukaitis. For 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, when I'm listening in this chamber to those MEPs who claim that they're patriots, I can't help remembering a saying: patriotism is the last resort of bastards. Don't you understand the meaning of that saying? And the French patriots perhaps could look at their history and perhaps ask themselves, shouldn't you learn from your peace agreement with Hitler? The answer is clear. This year we're marking the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Act, which set out territorial integrity as a very important principle. We have to overcome Putin. That's the only way. Thank you.
Speaker is Renier van Landschot.
Thank you. While Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin in Alaska, the largest airstrike on Ukrainian civilians happened. It seems that the more we talk about peace, the more aggressive Putin becomes. The more the US bows, the more bombs he throws. And the more we are paralyzed, the more he prolongs this war. We want this war to end as soon as possible and to prevent it from ever restarting. So make sure that Putin realizes that he will not gain anything. Conversations about security guarantees are good, but should never become a substitute for making Ukraine win. And the coalition of the willing should never become a substitute for building a true European defence union. Thank you.
The next speaker is Siegbert Dröse.
Madam President, thank you very much. The High Representative comes to this debate 10 minutes late. this is not honouring this Parliament. Ms. Kallas is saying a lot of nonsense. The only right thing, she says, the war can't be won. The Ukraine can't win this war. Why? Kallas doesn't say how the corrupt regime in Ukraine is attacking our infrastructure. If the rapporteur, Gala, CDU, talked about the final victory of Russia, that seems to come deeply from his conscience. Russia is taking revenge for the outcome of the Second World War. That is a disgrace, Mr. Gala. You should be ashamed. Show respect to this House. This House is a representation of the citizens of Europe. It isn't a sham parliament. The next speaker, Diana-Vicius.
Diana Joshua Ivanovici.
Thank you. I will speak Romanian. Cred că nu ați înțeles.
I don't think you understand one thing. We don't have the same spheres of influence. We have different power poles. I don't think you understand that the EU is now on its own and there are different powers at a global level with all those countries that you call dictators. And in the meantime, we see in Europe the most terrible of dictators. In Romania, we should have seen about 270 billion from the US to the Ukraine. But do you know what happened during the governments of Ciucă and Ciolacu that you supported? Well, $100 billion disappeared. And there are some people who are involved in stealing this money, not just Romanian prime ministers, but also important figures that run the EU. Nobody's saying this, but us Romanians disagree with dying on the front for Ukraine. But you should know that there are 1 million Romanians in Ukraine who are discriminated against by the dictator in Ukraine.
Very much. We are in the catch the eye and we're already running out of time and we are in a Ukrainian debate, not in a Romanian debate. So the next speaker is Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
Frau Präsidentin. High Rep Kaja Kallas. 2 debates esta mañana en el Pleno sobre Ucrania y sobre...
2 debates this morning in the plenary, Commissioner, on Ukraine and Gaza, 2 very different conflicts that do nonetheless share one characteristic: the hypocrisy of the foreign policy of the EU. The coalition of the willing is merely a poor substitute for unanimity. There's no clear position from the EU. And the coalition of the willing includes countries that are no longer even in the EU, like the UK. This premise on Ukraine's security requires a peace that is very, very far out of reach. And Putin is saying very clearly that the EU's involvement in Ukraine's security would not be security for Ukraine, but for the EU. But what's most serious is that no one is even inviting the EU to the talks, which merely disregards its so-called strategic autonomy.
Alexander Zell.
169 Milliarden Euro.
We have sent 169 billion euros to the Ukraine over recent years, and we've said that we won't import any Russian gas anymore. We've heard from that from Ms. Kallas. But what about the other consequences of your policy, Ms. Kallas? Our chemical industry is falling apart in Germany. That's because energy prices are just too high. Bayer, BASF, they're laying off people in droves. Leverkusen, Ludwigshafen, Bitterfeld, all of these people are having their jobs taken away from them because of your policy. You are spending all this money, which we don't have anymore. The government collapsed yesterday in France because they couldn't agree on saving measures. The German government is wringing its hands, trying to find new sources of money. The German Chancellor is saying that the German people have to work longer, more, until they're 70. That's what Friedrich Merz is saying. And we, in Strasbourg, and Berlin. What is done here continues to surprise me. You disdain the people, the taxpayers, who are funding everything you're doing. So that's why my party is riding high in the polls. This can't go on. Finally, this whole system will break.
Jetzt möchte ich der Kommissarin Frau Kroes.
Now let me give the floor to Commissioner Kroes.
2 minutes.
Liebe Präsidentin, honourable members, today's debate has proven support to Ukraine's path to the European Union, while challenges remain. What distinguishes Ukraine is its determination to confront these challenges, even while fighting for its very survival. We have seen that Ukraine is willing to take the difficult decisions needed to stay the course. At the same time, we cannot forget Ukraine's accession is not only about reform, it is also a strong security guarantee for Ukraine and for Europe. Each step forward is a step that makes our Union safer, stronger, more complete. This House, the Commission and the Council must remain united. We must send a clear message. Ukraine's European destiny is irreversible. Ukrainians are defending our shared values with their lives. The least we can do is rise to the occasion with political courage. Ukrainians' future is in Europe, and together we must ensure that the future becomes reality.
Vielen Dank. Als nächster hat der Berichterstatter Michael Gahler das Wort, ebenfalls für 2 Minuten.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the rapporteur for 2 minutes. President, one thing first. This is shameful. There have been 2 failed German dictatorships, and there are people here who want a 3rd German dictatorship. Shame on you.
We could note the usual coalition of the willing of 5 political groups and additional individual members that send a clear message. Ukraine's future is in the EU. On the way, we are supportive of the reform process, and as Putin does not want peace, not even a ceasefire, we agree to demand from our governments to strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend itself. Everyone must deliver what they can provide. For the German part to fulfill their task, we should start training Ukrainians on the Taurus missile and deliver it as soon as possible to make a difference. Hitting production sites of weapons, launch sites of missiles and important logistical infrastructure that transport the lethal weapons and soldiers to the front line. Contrary to certain claims, no German soldiers are needed to install it all. And there is one aspect that has not been addressed, and I think that is one of the motivations why the Ukrainians continue to fight, and we should support them. It is about the people, the Ukrainians, millions of them, who live in the Russian occupation zone. And their daily fate is incredible. Torture, arrests, no law, no rule of law at all, and I think that is the population that is at risk especially, and that is why this motivation is so strong to regain these occupied territories. It's about the people and not about the territory that is in the focus, and I think we have all reason to support the Ukraine in these efforts as well. And insofar, I thank you once again, dear colleagues, from these 5 groups and additional members for this solidarity that we have pursued over the years. I'm confident that we will succeed with our efforts. Thank you very much. Once again, Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. The last speaker, sorry, please. The last speaker we have is the High Representative Kaja Kallas. Please, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, honourable members. I will not use the 5 minutes. I want to thank the European Parliament for your unwavering support for Ukraine and its people. They are living very hard times, and you have been with them for 3.5 years, so that is also reflected in Mr. Kallas' report. So your commitment has been crucial, not only for Ukraine, but also defending the very principles as we Europeans stand for. And we have stood united in this very turbulent time, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Now we close the debate. Und als nächster Punkt der Tagesordnung folgt die Erklärung der Vizepräsidentin der Kommission und Hohen Vertreterin.
Thank you very much. We now have a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, together with the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Gaza at breaking point, EU action to combat famine, and the urgent need to release hostages and move towards a two-state solution.
The High Representative of the European Union, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you, dear President, honourable members of the European Parliament. Unlike in Ukraine, the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is testing Europe's resolve because we are not united. Europe has not sat on its hands. Europe has been the most active actor for Gaza in the world. We are the largest humanitarian donor and a constant supporter of Palestinian Authority and the two-state solution. We for the Middle East peace process to work with the External Action Service and DG ECHO to engage directly with Israel to open the gates of Gaza of humanitarian assistance.